Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is a film that actually came out a couple of weeks ago, and that is War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, War for the Planet of the Apes is the third film of the rebooted Planet of the Apes series. Basically, this is a series of films that act as both reboots and quasi-prequels to the original Planet of the Apes franchise. Now, I've already reviewed all the Planet of the Apes movies a couple of years ago, but real quick before I get on to this review, I just want to give a quick little mini retrospective on the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. Now, this franchise started in 1968 with the film Planet of the Apes, which was based on the 1963 Pierre Boulle novel. Now, I've never read the original Planet of the Apes novel, but from what I heard, apparently the original film is actually quite different than the original novel. Like, the movie changed a lot from the source material. Like, the whole twist ending at the end of the original film, that it was our planet the whole time, that was a twist ending that was added for the movie. There was nothing like that in the book. Now, the original movie was actually co-written by Rod Serling, who was the creator of The Twilight Zone, and the original Planet of the Apes movie has a real Twilight Zone feel to it. Like, I actually kind of look at the original film as being sort of an elongated Twilight Zone episode, because the twist ending at the end is such a Twilight Zone-esque ending. But the original Planet of the Apes is a classic for a reason. It is one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. And it's a film that arguably did not need sequels, but I actually think the sequels to Planet of the Apes are pretty good. Now, the first Planet of the Apes sequel came out in 1970, and it was titled Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which I personally love. Like, I adore Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and what I really like about that movie is it definitely continues the themes of the first movie, and it's definitely done in the same style as the first movie. At the same time, though, it's actually quite different as well, because the first Planet of the Apes movie is a straight-up science fiction film with social commentary in it. Beneath the Planet of the Apes is actually kind of a horror film in a way, so I like how it has a slightly different feel than the first one, but I really do enjoy Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And then you had Escape from the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 1971, and that one I also really enjoy, and that one is actually sort of a fish-out-of-water comedy in a way, or at least the first half is. Like, the first half is like a fish-out-of-water comedy, and then the second half is more of a serious science fiction film. And then you had Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which I think is the second best film in the original Planet of the Apes franchise. Like, right next to the first film, it's the second best of the series, in my opinion. And then the final film of the original Planet of the Apes series was Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which I don't necessarily hate, but I do think it's the weakest of the original series. And then you had the remake of Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2001, and that one sucked pretty badly. Like, it was a pretty bad movie, but the makeup effects in that movie were actually really good. If I could say one good thing about Tim Burton's remake of Planet of the Apes is the makeup effects were really good, but the movie itself was shit. And then in 2011, you had Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was both a reboot of the Planet of the Apes series, but also sort of a quasi-prequel to the original film, and the film also acted as sort of a remake of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And then you had Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was even better than Rise. And now you have this film, War for the Planet of the Apes, which I would say is probably just as good as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Like, I still think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes might be my favorite of this rebooted series, but this comes really close though. Now, in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you saw this virus get created, which caused apes to become super intelligent, but was deadly for humans, and that virus started to spread at the end of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Then in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, you realize that this virus brought about the end of human civilization, but it caused this civilization of intelligent apes to rise, and this civilization is led by Caesar, who was the main ape of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and you realize that he became the leader of this new ape civilization in Dawn. And in Dawn, the apes ended up meeting these surviving humans, and these uneasy tensions between the humans and the apes soon turn into all-out war because of the actions of a rebel ape named Koba. And this movie is really about the consequences of the war that Koba started. So in the beginning of the movie, you realize that there are these soldiers who are trying to hunt Caesar down because they blame him for this war, and Caesar is desperately trying to make peace with the humans, but in the beginning of the story, Caesar's family is murdered by this psychotic colonel named McCulloch, who's played by Woody Harrelson in the movie. So, in the beginning of the movie, Caesar ends up pretty much abandoning his people to get his revenge on McCulloch. And that's really all I want to say about the plotline of this movie. Anything else I think will give too much away, especially because this movie just recently came out. Now, War for the Planet of the Apes is an excellent movie. I still think I like Dawn a little bit better, but this is easily one of the best films of the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. And what I really love about this film is there's a lot of drama in the film, and there's a lot of social commentary, which honestly, if you watch a lot of the older Planet of the Apes movies, the older films had a lot of drama and social commentary in them. And I also loved how this film is really a human drama. At the same time, though, 98% of the movie doesn't even focus on the human characters. This movie focuses on mostly the ape characters. Like, they're the ones you follow throughout most of the movie, and they could have literally done a movie where it was just the ape characters and no humans at all, and it still would have been very interesting. And Woody Harrelson did an excellent job in this movie as McCulloch, the main villain of the movie, and he was terrifying in this movie. At the same time, though, when you find out his motivations, he's actually a really sympathetic character. And those are my favorite types of villains. The villains where, while you don't condone their actions, you do sort of understand what drove them to do what they're doing. And to me, villains are so much scarier when they're three-dimensional. And also, the effects work in this movie is amazing, and it's mostly CGI, and there were seriously shots in this movie where I almost couldn't tell it was CGI, where you got a close-up of a lot of the apes' faces, and I was like, is that CGI, or are they using animatronics there? Like, some of it is really, really damn good. I mean, there were a few shots here and there where, yes, I could tell it's CGI, but really, they did a really good job with the CGI and the motion capture in this movie. The effects in this movie are phenomenal. And the film also included a lot of really nice references to the original series. For example, in this movie, Caesar has a son who he names Cornelius, and Cornelius was the name of a major character in the first 3 Planet of the Apes movies in the original series, and ironically, Cornelius was actually Caesar's father in the original continuity, but in this movie and in this continuity, Caesar has a son named Cornelius. Also in this movie, there's an ape named Maurice who ends up adopting this little human girl who he eventually names Nova, and Nova was the name of a major character in the original Planet of the Apes movie. Also in this movie, McCulloch was the leader of this military organization which he called Alpha and Omega, which I feel like was a definite reference to the villains from Beneath the Planet of the Apes. You could also definitely tell this movie is paying tribute to films like Apocalypse Now, and also I saw a definite Watership Down influence on this story. Like, a lot of the plotline of this movie hits a lot of the same beats as Watership Down. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but there's a lot of similarities between this movie's plot and the plot of Watership Down. But yeah, I highly recommend going to see War for the Planet of the Apes. I recommend it if you're a fan of this series, but also if you're a fan of science fiction films in general, I definitely recommend seeing it.